Look, it is possible, but if you put in place the necessary plans and measures, you can reduce that possibility to a very low probability. But the very fact that there are very serious plans in place to address this matter indicates that it is a possibility, and it does happen in countries from time to time. And most recently, it happened in Zambia about a week or two ago when there was a national blackout in Zambia. Zambia is a relatively small electricity demand in the country. And so it could be restored reasonably quickly, but the situation there, power-wise, is pretty precarious, as it is in some of our other neighbors, and as it is in South Africa, as we know from repeated load shedding for the last decade. But we do have to acknowledge that load shedding is actually a intervention, a planned intervention to actually manage supply and demand and bring it into balance so that there is not a national blackout. If demand exceeds supply and you do nothing about it, you will eventually have a national blackout if you do nothing about that, because you're overloading the system and things will start tripping out and generators will trip out, and then you'll have less supply, and demand carries on and you don't do anything about it. Another generator will trip out because it's being overloaded, and so it cascades into a national blackout. But one thing we can say, and perhaps be thankful about, although it's not something that one should be too thankful about, but we've had a lot of practice with load shedding. We've got schedules in place and it kind of works reasonably well. And we're pretty slick and practiced at this over the years. When they first had load shedding in 2007, 2008, there were no schedules. The municipalities didn't have plans in place about what to do and how to commands go out from national control. People start shedding load and it's rotated around the country so that it's not impacting too much on one particular group or or area. So we got quite good at this. I'm not saying it's perfect, and in fact, most recently, there has been a concerning development, and that is when national control gives out a command to do load shedding. They find that a number of municipalities who are supposed to then respond and do load shedding within their municipal areas, apparently, according to Eskom, 26 of the 28 municipalities that do their own load shedding in response to a command didn't do it properly, and so they gave out a load shed command for 2,000 megawatts to be shed, and only 1,100 megawatts was shed. About 500 megawatts not shed by municipalities, and 400 megawatts not shed by its key industrial customers. These are big industry. They didn't reduce their load as they were supposed to, according to Eskom. And that meant that, so they gave a command for 2,000 megawatts to be shed, and only 1,100 megawatts was the response. So they had to do another 2,000 load shed commands, taking it from stage 2 to stage 4, because they knew that only about half of the 2,000 megawatt command was being responded to. So if you want another 900 megawatts, let's just say roughly 1,000 megawatts, you need to issue a 2,000 megawatt command to get a 1,000 megawatt response. And Eskom found that people were not, its customers, municipalities and large industrial customers, were not responding. And this is a really serious matter, because it meant, instead of having stage 2 load shedding, the rest of the country that were responding were pushed into a stage 4 load shedding. Now that means that some people are bearing a very onerous financial burden, while others are making profits off the ones that are responding. And worse than that, it really increases the risk of a national blackout, because the whole purpose of load shedding is to avoid a national blackout, bring supply and demand into balance. And if people start getting lackadaisical and don't take it seriously and don't do what they are contractually obligated to do, it increases the probability of a national blackout. But to answer your question quickly, yes, it is possible. The probability is low. There are manual interventions that take place. And even if those fail, then there are further automatic interventions called under-frequency load shedding devices that actually will then divide the country up into a number of different islands, so that if one island has a blackout, the other islands can carry on. So that manages the situation, but it's more disruptive and less controlled. The manual rotating load shedding is quite reasonably well controlled to minimize the impact on business and industry. You know, when under frequency load shedding steps in, as it did in Zambia, for example, it's very disruptive. But it is a necessary automated step to avoid a national blackout. So there are a whole lot of protocols in place. And there are also protocols about when you do have a national blackout, how do you restart as quickly as possible with the least possible time delay and disruption. So all of that indicates, the fact that all these plans are in place indicates that there is a possibility, but if you do it properly, it's a very slim possibility.
But to our viewers who are not energy analysts, I mean, the worst case scenario is not, we're not talking, when we're talking about a national blackout, we're not talking about like a week or two. It's probably like a day, or how long would a national blackout last?
It could last anything above 4 days, 4 or 5 days. And I just want to tell you how serious it is. If you have a national blackout, within a day or so, battery backups and diesel backups at all kinds of organizations will run out. ATMs will not operate. You will not be able to draw money. Banks will not operate. Petrol stations will not deliver petrol. Cell phones will not work. The lights will be out. We will be in darkness. The whole cell phone network will stop. There will be looting on a scale when people can't buy food, when shops close, and you can't draw money, you can't get travel, and you can't phone. You've got a serious problem on your hands. And there would be, in the darkness, widespread looting nationally on a scale that makes what we experienced previously look like a Christmas picnic. The consequences, the financial consequences and losses suffered by business will be staggering. I don't believe the insurance industry and the reinsurance industry will be adequately capitalized to even compensate businesses for the losses that they're going to suffer. They just don't have the capital reserves to fund the kind of claims that would result. It's a really serious issue, so you have to avoid it at all costs. I don't want to be alarmist, and I want to say clearly that that I think Eskom is pretty well prepared. In fact, they even practice some of the procedures of load shedding, of automated load shedding, as well as a restart from a black start. But a black start could be upwards of 5 days, depending on how well organized you are. But I do think Eskom are pretty well organized. They have a department that deals with this.